We're a little over a quarter into this NFL season, and so far, it's been a fun one. There's been a lot of surprising teams, a lot of teams overachieving, but with that comes a lot of teams that have been underachieving, and teams that we had high expectations in going into the season coming out flat and not looking like they are going to be anywhere near the teams we thought they were going to be. So in this video, I'm going to go over 3 different teams I believe have underperformed, all things considered, going into this season, and I'm going to rate them on the panic meter. This week is NFL panic meter, and we're going to rate them from 1 to 10, see how panicked should we be. Are they going to figure this out, or are they potentially screwed for the rest of the year? So I'm your host, Jack Gretler of ProBallPod. Let's get right into it with the panic meter. Now, the first team we have to talk about is kind of an obvious one. It's the Baltimore Ravens. This was a team that had Super Bowl expectations. We were all talking about the conference of juggernauts, Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, but Lamar has fallen to 1-5. I get it, he's been injured for 2 games, so it hasn't been all on Lamar, but this year has not been the same for the Baltimore Ravens. And you know where it starts? That Baltimore Ravens defense. This was not the defense of the old for the Baltimore Ravens. Even the dominant units we've seen from the 90s all the way up until last year. This team had sky-high expectations going into the year as they looked to have the best secondary in the league and a top 3 defense at minimum. And now they fell flat. They look like one of the worst defenses in the league. They start out the season by getting absolutely crushed by Josh Allen and go from there getting dominated at almost every game. To their credit, they seem to be turning it around against the Rams this week, but I don't 100% trust it moving forward because the reality is their defense has a lot of issues and a lot of stuff's gone wrong really fast to this team. Now, I think there's a lot going into why it's bad, and we can talk about the Ravens offense a little bit, the Derrick Henry fumbling, the inconsistencies, but I give them a little bit of grace because they have been putting up numbers. They have been getting in a couple shootouts. They just haven't been winning them necessarily. Lamar's been out as well, so that's something to consider. But when you look at the Ravens offense, they're not really the ones I'm necessarily panicking on at this point because Lamar's going to come back and everyone else is relatively healthy outside of Ronnie Stanley. But I think they can get around that injury for the most part. But where I'm really panicked is this Ravens defense. The reality is their defense has faced a ton of injuries and a ton of players that have not looked the same, and it starts up front. Matabike, a prime elite defensive tackle, one of the best in the league last year, is expected to miss the whole season and is not going to be returning. And you know what? It is shown through these early 6 games of the season as the Ravens defense has not been having a lot of juice up front. For example, Kyle Van Noy, this guy had 12 sacks last year, looked like an absolute beast off the edge, and looked like he was carrying this Ravens edge rushers. Nowhere to be found this year. He has 2 sacks up to this point. He's not having the same impact he was having before. There's a lot of guys that they're still trying to develop right now. Mike Green's in the back. They just traded away, so we'll see what kind of opportunities that opens up for the team. But overall, this defense does not have the juice. Kyle Van Noy has regressed this year, and Matabike being out is killing them. Not to mention we have a lot of concerns regarding a lot of other players through this early part of the season because the reality is they're still injured. Roquan, he's been injured and on and off through the season, and he is an essential best linebacker in the league. If he's not on, this Ravens defense's main signal caller is being taken away. But for the Ravens, for this panic meter, I have to give them a 7 out of 10. The reality is this Ravens team does have every chance to turn it around, but the reality is I don't see enough out of this defense, talent-wise, to be able to pull that off at this point. I don't see enough juice in their defensive line, not to mention they are still 4 games under 500. Winning division could be out of the question already, so how are we supposed to trust it at this point? It's tough for Lamar. He can come back, and he's probably going to be elite. He's probably going to have an elite offense, but you're 4 games under 500 already. It's going to take a lot to get back in this season, and even then, you're still carrying what's going to be a weaker defense, regardless. Even if Roquan comes back 100%, Matabike is not returning. The secondary has still been up and down, and the reality is Lamar is going to have to be absolutely perfect if he has any chance of even making the playoffs, much less winning a Super Bowl, which is a totally different story when you're going against Mahomes, Allen, Herbert in the playoffs with these elite offenses. Your defense is going to need to show up and need to show up big. So the reality is this Baltimore team, while I'm not saying they're going to be its bottom 3 team by any means, they're going to win some games once Lamar gets back. I'm still panicking considering this team had Super Bowl expectations. Give me a 7 out of 10 on that panic meter for Baltimore. The next team I'm panicking about, potentially the Arizona Cardinals. After they started 2-0 and they looked really promising, their defense is starting to turn it around. Their young offensive breakout candidates were starting to come through. They've since then gone on a 4-game losing streak and don't look the same. The reality is a lot of this 4-game losing streak comes from a ton of injuries. They lost Trey Benson. They lost James Conner. MHJ's in concussion protocol. They have been banged up everywhere on offense. And now the latest injury, Kyler Murray, their franchise quarterback, their guy that was supposed to have a crucial year coming into this year, and now he's injured as well. We don't know when he's going to be back just yet. And the reality is there's been a lot of panic around this Arizona team because of how they performed without Kyler Murray and MHJ. They had a decent game on offense without their franchise signal caller, and the reality is that's a little concerning. I mean, Jacoby Brissett is performing well without Marv. He's performing well without Trey Benson, James Conner. And that Cardinals team has been a tough watch during the 4-game losing streak. There's the unacceptable meltdown against the Titans that Kyler was a part of. There was multiple one-score losses to this point, and the reality is this team was a team that went from playoff expectations to not knowing. So it's tough to evaluate this team. I think Gannett has their defense playing well, and I think it's a promising unit. But the reality is the injuries on offense are starting to catch up to them, and quick. And now we are starting to have those real concerns about Kyler moving forward, especially going into year 2. The defense is starting to show up. Kyler needs to be available, and he needs to be rallying his offense around a strong defense, and he has not been able to do that yet. So as for the Cardinals, I think it's going to be an 8 out of 10 on the panic meter. Their schedule does not give them any favors. There are not really any freebies left. The freebies were earlier. They were the Tennessees, the Saints. And the reality is during the 6th game of easy-ish football, they went 2-4. So now we're entering the real gauntlet. We're entering tough teams, playoff teams or fringe playoff teams, and it's not going to just be freebies at this point. Kyler needs to come back, and immediately, as reality is this year, he could be playing for his job. I give them an 8 out of 10. If this season melts down, we could easily be looking at a way different Arizona team, especially at the quarterback position. The injuries are catching up already, and they're entering a hard stretch. I don't see how this team is able to turn it around and become a playoff team at this point. I believe in their defense. I believe in what they're building, but the reality is I have real concerns about Kyler Murray moving forward, giving an 8 out of 10 for the Cardinals on that panic meter. And last but not least, on teams that have been quote-unquote disappointing, the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, through 6 games, this team is 500, 3-3. You might be asking yourself, that's not really disappointing, that's solid, it's in striking distance, but for the Chiefs it is. This is a team that was going for 3 years in a row in the Super Bowl. They were trying to go for a three-peat. Last year they won 14-plus games. They've been dominant force, but this Chiefs team had a rough go of it to start, going down early, but starting to get right, starting to wake up a little bit, starting to warm up. What's fascinating about the Chiefs this year is we're starting to see a pivot in identity. This is not the first time we've seen it happen either, so don't get it twisted. When Mahomes first entered the league in 2018, we saw him going ballistic for 50-plus touchdowns in a strong passing offense where the defense, it was not that great. It was up and down, and we saw how this style evolved into Mahomes being a dink and duck kind of quarterback, not having to do Superman things because he had an elite defense, and they figured out a way to get a great offensive line and a run game going. So he wasn't asked to do all this crazy stuff as he was in previous years. But this year, we're sort of seeing the identity shift again. Under Matt Nagy, this Chiefs team had been a lot of running the ball, a lot of short passes, but Mahomes seems to be unleashing that MVP form. Once again, the last 2 games, he's been getting really hot. Specifically, he's been throwing for 4 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, and we're starting to see that Chiefs really have to air it out because of the lack of running game. But the reason why I'm not panicked on this Chiefs offense at all is because it's explosive. Rashee Rice comes back this week. Very exciting addition. Xavier Worthy is starting to feel himself in the second year. They have the weapons. That's not the issue. They were just banged up, and that was why they were struggling a little bit with the run game disappearing and the banged up weapons. There's not much Mahomes could have done at that point. But now that people are starting to get healthy, the pieces are starting to fall into place a little bit, and this Chiefs team is looking to come on strong. As for the defense, they've underperformed, honestly, compared to past metrics. But I'm not worried about them because the reality is it doesn't seem to be a fundamental issue like the Ravens. This seems to be a bit of effort issue from a certain amount of players, a bit of trying to get comfortable this season, trying to feel it out a little bit. But I have 100% faith in Steve Spagnuolo to figure this out. Their talent is still there. They lost Justin Reed, yes, but the rest of it is still there. They have the core that made their defense special. And, well, I'm not going to say they're going to be a top 5 defense necessarily. I think they're going to get the job done as a defense. And I think Spags is going to have them ready to go. He's going to be ready to play. And overall, I'm not worried about this Chiefs defense. They just need to be middle of the pack, and Mahomes and these new weapons are going to do the rest in this new era Chiefs offense. As for the panic meter, it's a 3. Mahomes is coming back to form and fast. Rashee Rice is coming back. I expect that a lot of that to open up the Chiefs offense because now there's even less attention on the run game because of those explosive playmakers. I have no worries. I have complete faith. The defense as well, they're starting to come together. Only allowing 17 points to the elite Detroit offense is a big accomplishment at this point, and I expect them to figure it out quick. They're already in striking distance, and with the Chargers' injuries, they could easily overtake them, and then it becomes a two-man race between them and Denver. But overall, it was a sloppy start to the season, but it was understandable. Xavier Worthy was out. Rasheed Rice was suspended. But now that these guys are coming back, Mahomes has the identity. You see what the Chiefs are trying to build. I fully expect them to be back in shape and running potentially the AFC West by the end of this year. Panic meter low. But that's all I have for today on the NFL Panic Meter. We've seen some teams that I expect to turn it around, and some teams I'm really starting to get worried about, not only for this season, but for the following seasons. If you enjoy, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and follow on the socials for weekly NFL content, and leave it in the comments. What are your thoughts? Who should be panicking the most? Whose panic meter is too low, too high, just right? Who is the team that you're most worried about in the league? And if you hope you enjoyed this video, I will catch you guys back here next week. This is Jack of ProBallPod signing out.